For years, the Canadian dream, it was almost a formula in Punjab, India. Study in Canada, get a job, get Canadian work experience, apply for permanent residency, build a better life, send some money home, buy a land, buy a home, help the family. Perfect formula. For thousands of Punjabi families living in India, Canada became more than another country. It became a future. And this future grew rapidly. According to TimesXP's research, ladies and gentlemen, Indians accounted for more than 40% of an Canadian study permit in 2022. Of the roughly 2.26 lakh Indian students who received visas that year, around 1.36 lakhs were from Punjab. And that's a lot of migration corridor. And around that particular dream, an entire industry emerged. Immigration consultants, education agents, IELTS coaching center, loan providers, recruiters, college representatives, and businesses promising students that, let me tell you here, Canada would offer them something that seemed increasingly difficult to find at home. Basically, a pathway forward. For many students, an agent was the person who explained everything. Which college, which course, how much money, what documents, what visa. And here, most importantly, what happens after graduation. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where the problem began. You know why? Because over the time, the promise of education that became closely connected with the promise of immigration. Well, students were not simply buying a degree, they were buying what they believed was a pathway here. And let me tell you, some were promised almost certainty, admission, work permit, job, permanent residency. But the Canadian government, it has now changed the rules, like many other North American nations. Study permit targets have been reduced. Work rules have been tightened. Temporary resident number are being reduced. And yes, one of the biggest changes concerns the public-private college model. Under this particular system, private colleges delivered programs while students received credentials connected to the public colleges. That model, it became extremely popular among international students, specifically Indians from Punjab. But from May 15th, 2024, students enrolling in certain such programs, they were no longer eligible for the post-graduation work permit. Suddenly, a program that looks like a pathway to Canada that looked very different. And now look at what happened in Calgary. Hundreds of Indian graduates, again, many from Punjab, protested after their PGWP applications were refused. Some staged prolonged protest and hunger strike in Canada. Their argument, straightforward. We spent the money, we followed the system, we studied the course. Why did the rules really change? That question, it goes much deeper than one immigration application. Because let's be honest here, many families back home, they took the loan. They sold their land, they sold all the assets, they borrowed money, they invested tens of thousands of dollars into the child's future. And when the immigration pathway, it changes after that particular investment has been made, can you imagine the consequences? Well, the consequences, they are enormous. The dream becomes the debt, the visa becomes uncertainty, and the foreign degree that no longer guarantees the future people ever imagined. And that is why the Punjab-Canada story is so emotional. For an entire generation, Canada was the proof that leaving home, it could transform your life. Now that assumption, it is being challenged. And perhaps the most uncomfortable part is that the system did not collapse overnight. There was a pattern. It was built over years. Cheap courses, flexible schedules, evening classes, work during the day, courses in business, healthcare, IT, logistics, truck driving, and many other fields that you can never imagine. Here, for some students, this flexibility, it was genuinely useful. But it also created an ecosystem where education and immigration, that became almost inseparable. And when Canada began tightening the whole system, the entire structure, it started to shake, just like it is doing now. In fact, there were also cases involving fraud acceptance letter and immigration agents. In fact, let me give you an example here. The case involving Brijesh Mishra, a Jalandhar-based agent. Jalandhar is in India. He was linked to the fraud letters that was used in applications by hundreds of Indian students. Well, that became part of the most prominent examples. The lesson is painful. When migration becomes an industry, people can start selling dreams that immigration systems they were never designed to guarantee. And yes, when those dreams collapse, then the consequences they are felt not only in Canada, they are felt in Punjab, they are felt in family homes, they are felt in bank accounts, in farms, in houses built with borrowed money. And yes, in the expectation of young people who believe that their future it was already mapped out. But yes, while one story is about families fighting for their future, ladies and gentlemen, our next story is about a courtroom battle that has generated an entirely different kind of public speculation.